I don't think that anybody knew what to expect from the third season of Seth MacFarlane's epic sci-fi comedy drama, The Orville. This is a series that started off like this, but eventually grew into a really well-made, well-written, oddly thoughtful, and surprisingly deep space epic that, at times, rivals the best of Star Trek in quality. When the third season was announced, it came with a lot of changes. A new platform, a new cast member, a new intro sequence, a new expanded runtime, and a new title. We were no longer watching The Orville. Oh no, we were watching The Orville New Horizons. And honestly, I thought I knew what this show was going to do. After all, I'd just made a video all about how this show pulled itself up by its bootstraps and reshaped itself into its current form. I thought I understood the trajectory that Seth MacFarlane and the show's creative team were aiming for. I was very wrong. Season 3 ended just last week, and I'm still sorting through all of it in my mind, so I want to talk about what happened. Was Season 3 the disappointment that some fans have declared it to be, and given how it all shook out, what might the future of The Orville look like if it gets a fourth season? So let's start with this. 1. False expectations. From the beginning of this series, Seth MacFarlane was playing the long game. A part of the genius of the show's first season is how we're initially presented with fairly stock science fiction archetypes. The Worf-esque Bortus.
I am not amused. I am not a merry man.
The Data-like robot Isaac.
And this is humor.
Yes! I wish to know more about humor.
The stern and gruff Dr. Finn.
You've been in sickbay 3 times this week. I know what you're doing.
My orders were to give you a thorough physical. In case you hadn't noticed, I have to answer to the same commanding officer that you do.
And over the course of several episodes, these characters are given depth in surprising ways. Alara Katan is introduced as a sort of visual punchline, you know? Gee, isn't it funny to see a smallish woman who's super strong? But as we learn about her history, her family, her culture, her interpersonal troubles, her physical difficulties on the ship, her worries, her hopes, well, she becomes really interesting. She moves from the generic to the specific. Bortus, the misogynist, becomes Bortus the father, Bortus the husband, Bortus the outcast from his people, Bortus the revolutionary. And in that way, the Orville mastered one of the rarest skills in modern television. It mastered the payoff. While a lot of shows are great at planting mystery boxes and hinting at future plotlines, rarely do these shows end up paying off those threads in a satisfying way. And so, when Season 3 of The Orville was announced as a kind of grand epic, my expectations were sky high. After 2 seasons of setups, what was the payoff gonna be? This was where I made my mistake. From the very start of its third season, it was clear that the Orville wasn't interested in payoffs. It was interested in something else entirely. 2. Mutant Spiders. When the third season's title was announced, I assumed that this signaled an urge by the show's writers to create some kind of grand 10-episode story that could be neatly grouped together under this new name, New Horizons. And yet the third season of The Orville was episodic. Very episodic. With standalone stories that contained barely any mention of the ongoing Kaelon invasion that was threatening, all biological life in existence. Instead, we got stories about time travel, a story about Topa's gender, a story about a planet of frightening illusions, and in what I can only assume was an attempt to capture the much sought-after Jenny Nicholson demographic, a story about spiders. In short, Babylon 5 this wasn't. If you came expecting a sweeping 10-episode epic, boy were you in for disappointment. The Orville had worked hard over 2 seasons to set up some pretty terrific stakes with the Kaelon War, but it had worked too well. The stakes were just too high to ignore while we dealt with these side quests.
You're in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee.
Were the episodes any good? Sure, absolutely. I enjoyed them a lot. The story about Gordon Malloy being stranded in the 21st century was compelling as all hell. The story about Isaac's attempted suicide was handled with incredible sensitivity and thoughtfulness. The ongoing story about Topa understanding her gender and her place in Moclan society was similarly heartfelt and well told. And the one about the spiders was... it was what it was. But the problem was that it was hard to focus on these plots when the looming Kaelon invasion was in the back of my mind. It's almost like if during the middle of the 10-part Dominion War storyline that concluded its run, Deep Space Nine had thrown in an episode about baseball and doing a casino heist. No. You do those before, get them out of your system, then focus on the drama at hand. But here's the deal. The problem with my reaction to the Orville's third season was that it was kind of my own fault. The show didn't let me down, I let it down. Let me explain. 3. I was wrong. Take a second and imagine that the Orville hadn't retitled itself. Imagine if it hadn't been promoted with a thrilling teaser depicting an epic Kaelon attack that ended up being a dream sequence anyway. Imagine if the looming Season 2 cliffhanger of a Kaelon Union war hadn't been defined quite so well, if the stakes hadn't been so high. I think I would have come to this third season with very different and much more accurate expectations. Looking back on it, I don't think that the Kaelon Union War was ever all that important to Seth MacFarlane. Or, let me rephrase that. I don't think that the Kaelon Union War was any more important to MacFarlane than Topa's journey to find her identity. The Kaelon Union War was no more important than Isaac's relationship with Dr. Finn. It was no more important than Captain Mercer's relationship with the Krill Talea. Than Ensign Charlie Burke's working through her grief. The Orville was not a show that wanted to focus on a single plotline, a single thread, a single threat. It wanted to tell as many stories as possible, and with its third season, it did what it set out to do. After the show's season finale ended, I went back and rewatched some of the season's earlier episodes, and they are very, very strong examples of this kind of science fiction. Sure, the expanded runtime made them a little shaggier than episodes from the show's earlier seasons, and you could maybe accuse the show of getting a little self-righteous at certain points, but I would argue that the absolute worst episode of this show beats so much of today's genre television. The Orville is a special show. It's a stylistic throwback to an earlier era of TV, a modern commentary on today's society, and I think it's future-proofed itself, and is going to be enjoyed for a very, very long time, which leads us to 4. The legacy of the Orville. I don't know if the Orville will continue for a 4th season. I'd like it to, and the fact that it just got added to Disney Plus in the US might be a promising sign that it's going to find a larger audience than it had on Fox or on Hulu. But The Orville is also an expensive series with a niche fan base, and the show is no longer part of a network that really wanted to keep Seth MacFarlane happy. But even if we never get another adventure aboard The Orville, I think that this show will have a long legacy. People are going to discover it for years to come, and I think that a lot of the unevenness with the show's tone and pacing will be ironed out when it's streamed as a complete whole. And if we do get another year, well, I look forward to the show surprising me again and seeing what Seth MacFarlane's next ambitions for this series are going to be. How will Mercer and Talea's relationship evolve? Will Mercer find his lost daughter? Will Dr. Finn and Isaac's marriage succeed? Will Moclan evolve its views on females? What will become of Sargas 4? I have total faith in this show's ability to answer all of the questions that it's posed for itself, and that makes me more excited about this show than nearly any other on TV right now. And after making 2 videos where I admitted all of the many ways that I was wrong about it, I also have faith that whatever I predict this show is going to do is probably going to be proven wrong. And if you'd like to see me be proven wrong on a regular basis, feel free to subscribe to my channel where I talk about topics as diverse as ALF, Community, and even Howard the Duck for reasons that, I don't actually remember why I made that video at this point, but I recall feeling very strongly about it. Until next time, bye!